Happy Tuesday, everybody. You're back inside the lab for the next episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, one in which we're taking a look at what is going on with Valeri Nichushkin. And, of course, the hot topic of the week is Nathan MacKinnon, the top fantasy hockey piece in the NHL. We're going to break it all down, including a little look at Steel and I's teams. Happy Tuesday. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to your daily source for fantasy hockey news and bold, spicy gambling takes, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, joined, as always, by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele Rodin, and on this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone, holding down the Buffalo Bills Mafia Nation. Thank you for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. My friend Steele, my co-host, we got a lot to talk about. And as much as I am fired up for obvious reasons for the NFL, a player entering the Player Assistance Program is no laughing matter. We look at these players like they are, for us, fantasy pieces, but they're obviously human beings as well. Valeri Nichushkin is on a really good season right now, and that might be the more important reason why we're going to talk about him dealing with some off-ice issues. He's going to be not playing for an indefinite period of time. Quickly touch on that, Steele. Meat and potatoes. You just got to see Nathan MacKinnon live in color. Need your take on this. You have some vibes, perhaps that are a bit spicy, but let's talk about it. Nathan MacKinnon, the top fantasy piece in the NHL. Little touch on our hockey teams, fantasy-wise, and, of course, Tuesday's bets. Let's go, Steele, right over to you, brother. What do you think about this Nichushkin situation? Because, look, we're not going to speculate. Let's go on what we know. We know this is a player that has dealt with multiple off-ice situations that don't exactly make him look so good. But on the ice, he's been cooking. What are your takes on this situation?
Well, it's obviously a rough time for any fantasy GMs out there who have Valeri Nichushkin in their lineup. Again, getting closer and closer to the playoff time. So we don't know how long he's going to be out for, and this could be crucial for them as he's a point-per-game player right now. He's playing on one of the best teams, Colorado Avalanche, playing with some of the best players who we're going to talk about shortly in Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, Mikko Rantanen, all those guys on the Colorado Avalanche. So when you have a player who has 22 goals, 42 points in 40 games, point per game player, likes to shoot the puck. He's got a 17.2 shooting percentage. He's a little bit physical out there. Penalty minutes are a little bit down as well, but that's not part of his game. You're really looking for the goals, the points, the shots, and the physicality that he brings. And like I said, this is the you got to do what's best for yourself. And, entering the NHL Players Assistance Program is what he needs to do, because we know a lot of stories that have come out with this player over the last year and a half, especially what happened in Seattle in that one road game. But as a fantasy player and as fantasy GM who has this player, you're in a tough position because you're losing one of your best players right now in Nichushkin. Again, 42 points in 40 games. So it's a tough position as we get closer and closer to playoff time. You're trying to make a playoff spot, and you want to have him for the playoffs so you can really so he can really bring a key part to your success in the postseason in fantasy leagues.
There's the obvious concern for the Colorado Avalanche, a team that, of course, lots to like, Steele. We know that they're going to be a threat for the cup just based on the player that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, in Nathan MacKinnon. I don't even think many things other need to be said about this team when you have a player cooking and playing at his level. That's number one. And then you add into the mix, obviously, the other players, Taze, Makar, Rantanen, and others. Anyway, it's about the fantasy side of this. Nichushkin was just really starting to cook in a very big way, replacing a guy who's put up 22 goals and 42 points in 40 games. At this point in the season is just not going to happen. You're going to have to basically do a Band-Aid situation and get lucky. That's why we're going to break down a whole bunch of options for you on another Monday episode of all the top waiver wire targets you need. But just very quickly, with replacing him, this is the toughest part about this situation, Steele. And hit me with your take on this before we move on very quickly. It's not an injury. It's not a suspension. He's entering the player assistance program. This is not something we can predict when he's going to come back. And when he does come back, what kind of shape is he in? Do they have to work him back in? This becomes a very precarious situation for fantasy GMs, especially in striking distance of still winning money, because do you use an IR spot? Do you drop him outright? I wish I had a straight up answer right now today, but considering the article on NHL.com and Colorado Avalanche feeds on this situation, Steele was about 90 words and 2 paragraphs. Something tells me this might be a developing story, one in which might not go so good for Nichushkin. Not going to speculate. Hit me with your next topic. I kind of forget what we were going to talk about. Hit me with the next one, though. It's been a bit of a Bills ride today.
Buffalo Bills getting it done against Buffalo Bills
for now.
It done right now. Josh Allen absolutely killing it against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But let's continue with the Colorado Avalanche. Nathan MacKinnon, in my opinion, and it might be a little bit of a bold take, going a little bit too far, but at this point in the season, we owe the last 3 to 4 years, actually since Connor McDavid's come into the league, we've all been mesmerized by this player's ability to play at the NHL level and even exceed that at sometimes. We don't talk enough about how Nathan MacKinnon is on the same level or even sometimes greater than Connor McDavid at this point. I just got the chance to watch Nathan MacKinnon play against the Toronto Maple Leafs. It's absolutely mesmerizing, absolutely incredible to watch his speed, his footwork, and stick handling all at the same time. I know Connor McDavid does the exact same stuff, but when you bring in the caliber of, what he does all around the ice, in the defensive zone, in the offensive zone, taking one-timers, playmaking, stick handling, making defenders look silly out there, the edge work, the speed again. The speed is what really blew me away in that game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Every single time he stepped onto the ice, he was blowing past every single player, creating plays out there, and he had a 2-point or 3-point night, I believe. And I was there at the game with my dad, and just his reactions as well, just watching him. He didn't even realize how good Nathan MacKinnon was. So, overall in the NHL, I think he's right there or even beyond, just a little bit beyond Connor McDavid, at this point in the season. Fantasy-wise, I think he's obviously better than Connor McDavid this year because Connor McDavid started real slow. And you go to check the stats,
that's a fact. It's a fact.
Fantasy-wise,
that's clear.
I think Nathan MacKinnon's up there, but you can even talk about Nikita Kucherov and what he's doing in Tampa Bay, 72 points in 43 games. MacKinnon is right behind him, 69 points in 43 games, so he's not far off. He actually leads the NHL with the most assists so far, 46 assists from Nathan MacKinnon. We don't really talk about his playmaking ability as much as we should, but from what I saw, to me, Nathan MacKinnon is the best fantasy asset right now. He's also the best NHL player from what I've seen.
I like this conversation because also we're going to talk about it in a very clear-cut angle. It's right now. And we're also going to talk about fantasy and on the ice as something that have to be looked at differently. And we've brought this topic up multiple times. Connor McDavid, to me, I've actually been lucky enough to watch both of these players live. And I think you have as well, Steele.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you remember that game against, and now we're going to just regale a few stories here, old school. Connor McDavid undressed Morgan Riley a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
In an absolute unreal fashion, in about 5 feet of ice to work with. And I went, okay, I think we need to maybe start paying attention about Connor McDavid, about not just the best player of this generation, as the best player ever. We're not going to talk about records or Gretzky or anything. Just about his ability on the ice. I'm going to come back full circle. I'm telling you, I'm not rambling. Nathan MacKinnon just being able to put himself in this conversation after what I've seen from him now on the ice. You were there. You saw it. You got my brain thinking. The angle about his fantasy value, I'm not going to argue. To me, it's still Connor McDavid, but I have a feeling, and this is what I'll leave it at this, these two teams might have to go through each other sooner than later. And that's when I want to decide this conversation, because both of these players are elite. Nathan MacKinnon is a bit of a freight train. That's how I describe his game. Connor McDavid, more of a magician, a bit more silky. Are they different? For sure. Are they equally as good? I think it's still edge to Connor McDavid. I hope we're going to be able to see this play out in postseason action, which I believe it will sooner than later, Steele. Sooner than later, we're going to talk about our fantasy team so far. A couple of general thoughts halfway through the NHL season and Tuesday's bets. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Make sure you're checking out the Game Time app because you never want to be stressed out buying tickets for your favorite event. Make sure you're checking out the Game Time app, Steele and I's favorite way to buy tickets for our favorite events, theater, comedy, sports, music, you name it, everything in your area. Good deals, greatest prices, and an app that's super easy to use. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue going on YouTube and subscribe to the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. They're here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. They've been open on YouTube now for over a month. Continue to go to their channel, subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And we appreciate all that love and support you show this channel right here, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Subscribe, follow, and leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us Monday through Friday. Let's get into something that we haven't talked about for a while, though. Our fantasy leagues, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Listener League. It's been pretty bad for you and I. You know, we come on here, we say we're the gurus of the fantasy hockey world, and it hasn't been the case right now in these two leagues. You and I have been right beside each other at number 11 and number 12 in both the casual and competitive league. I'll talk to you. I'll throw it over to you first. What do you think's gone wrong for us, or specifically yourself so far?
Yeah.
And do you think that we'll be able to turn it around in time come playoffs?
Well, I just also need to throw another fantasy guru under the bus in Blake Creamer, who is actually under both of us in our league. So whatever you want to say, my bad apples and Genos, but I don't care. Mans are out here on a ruthless tip right now. Hashtag Josh Allen. But look, Steele, one of the reasons straight up, and it sounds like a cop-out, doing these drafts live on air with our fans and interacting. And I know this year we didn't actually record our drafts, but I just think for me, there's far too many actions going on, too many chirps, and too much going on the line for me. That's a cop-out. But number two, excuse me, it's one of those things that I actually preach to people that I don't listen to myself. I get caught up in my personal life. I get busy. I forget. I don't take a look at my team, and I don't do exactly what I ask people out there to do. Set your rosters ahead of time. Do your bit of research. And, you know, I usually do that. The last couple of weeks I've just slapped. It's no excuse. Right now, you and I are in trouble. Do I think we can turn it around? Yes, it's going to have to be very special, but also that's what fantasy hockey is about, and that's what gambling is about. And as much as we come on here and give advice, we're betting on human beings. We're halfway through. Anything can happen. I'm buying into it. How are you feeling? Because I would say, other than my complacency, I would just say I got a little bit unlucky with injuries, but that's not something you can predict too much. But that's something you've talked about, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And, you know, that's something you always have to take into consideration when doing your drafts. You know, for me personally, in both, especially the competitive league, definitely made some poor draft decisions. You know, it all started in the 6th round when I took Johnny Gaudreau. Right after him, in the 8th round, I took Devin Levi, and that just kind of derailed myself, especially in this competitive league where just a couple of poor picks, and those players really stand out. Like I said, Johnny Gaudreau, Devin Levi, Jake DeBrusk, Anders Lee was really bad. Hampus Lindholm was not producing. And then also, again, what I've really noticed this season is after all the conversations you and I have had about goaltenders with Amato and everyone else
let's talk about this deal.
I did a very poor job drafting goaltenders. And what I've noticed this year, especially in 3 out of 4 of my leagues, if you don't have great goaltending in fantasy leagues, you're not going to be winning fantasy hockey leagues. That's a big thing that I've noticed here. You don't, obviously, we talked about not drafting goaltenders in the first 2 rounds.
I'm not feeling that strategy anymore.
I'm not feeling that strategy as well. I still like to pick mine in the 3rd, but waiting to pick my first goaltender in the 8th round really hurt me. And what I've noticed in all 3 of my leagues is if you don't have good goaltending, you're pretty much losing on a weekly basis because you're losing 4 categories right there and right then in goals against average, save percentage, shutouts, and wins. That really hurt me as well. But I'm going to take a little bit of a different cop out. than what you said.
Love it.
My cop out for a lot of these leagues that I'm in, just unlucky weekly schedules. I've had so far.
That's a good cop out.
It's a great cop out because I've just had really bad weekly matchups and just got the worst schedule possible. And I want to use my other fantasy league as an example. For the longest time, I was in the I think I was 12th or 11th for like the first 2.5 months. Even though I was top 4 in goals, top 3 in assists, I was actually first in plus minus. I was top 4 in game-winning goals. I was first in shots on goal. I was top 4 or 5 or first in 7 out of the forward categories that we had, and I was still 11th because I just had an unlucky schedule. And I've even talked to one of my friends about this as well, as who he's in a different league with his friends. And it's the same thing with him. He's got an unbelievable team, just an unlucky weekly schedule that he got put on at the beginning of the season. So that's my cop out of the, my reasoning for my poor display of fantasy hockey league this year. But also to bring it back to an actual legitimate reason, poor management as well as poor draft decisions. Like I said, just drafting a lot of young guys that I had a lot of faith in coming into this year, guys who I thought would have bounce back and just really haven't done so. Example, Johnny Gaudreau, who has just been very bad for Columbus, I think, as well as a few other players as well. But the one takeaway I'm taking from this is the goaltending. It is the goaltending. I
agree.
If you don't have strong goaltending or at least one starting goaltender in the competitive league, I had to trade both goaltenders. I didn't have Linus Ullmark or Carter.
And actually, I would say you were pretty fortuitous in getting that done at the start. You may have been way more behind the 8 ball than perhaps you are now.
I had Devin Levi and John Gibson as my 2 goaltenders by the end of the draft. I had Carter Hart and Linus Ullmark by the beginning of at least the beginning of November. Or midway through November. So to me, that's the one takeaway I'm taking from this. I still agree that you don't want to take goaltending in at least the first 2 rounds, but after the second round, I'm taking my goaltender.
I have to just wholeheartedly agree because also, look, if you want to talk to someone about who has struggled and learned from those struggles in terms of goaltending, and you can back me up on this, we talk off air, we talk text, we talk every single day. What do you hear from me other side from talking about the 4 or 5 young players I like, Seth Jarvis, hashtag. Anyway, it's goaltending. You can't press enough about, because look, you can always hit the waiver wire and get lucky, but getting lucky with a D-man, a little harder. Getting lucky with forwards, a little easier. Goaltending, it might not happen for you, and I have been the victim of it. So anyway, bring it all back together. Make sure you have your finger on the pulse. Our teams up and down, so far still in my keeper dynasty, though, doing pretty well out of 16 teams. I'm sliding up and down. The other night I was high as 5th. So we are a little bit knowing what we're talking about, which we will continue right around the break. Big time bets, baby. We have some winners for you. I'm confident.
Hopefully you have some winners on my side. It has been a brutal start to the week, but we're going to have a positive attitude going into Tuesday. I need to make some money back, but let's get into it. This episode is also brought to you by the Sleeper app. We are halfway through the season, and the Colorado Avalanche are absolutely killing it in their division, in the Central Division, trying to get to the top spot right now. Winnipeg Jets holding on. Regardless of where we are in the current standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on the Sleeper app, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, but it's not just hockey. You can also play daily fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, CFB on Sleeper. They've got the group chat, team chat functionality that Flip and I really love to do. Entries can be made in under a minute. All you have to do is pick on whether studs like Connor McDavid, Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, Connor Hellebuck, if they will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minus, and more on a given game. To win a 100-time bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Locked On Fantasy Hockey fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and location availability. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Let us know what you think about this conversation with Nathan MacKinnon. Is he the best fantasy asset out there to this point in the season, or just is he number one ahead of Connor McDavid? We're on opposite sides flip, but hopefully we're not on opposite sides for big time bets where the money is made. I'm throwing it over to you because I need to listen to you and what your strategy is, because my strategy is just not working. Doesn't seem like whatever I pick, I'm winning right now. So I'm throwing it over to you. What's your bets for Tuesday night?
What I would actually say to you on that front, Steele, and in all honesty, I know like we throw a lot of things out here on the show. Just stick to what you were doing originally. Losing a bunch in a row is going to happen to any gambler. Even the pros in Vegas are going to go on cold streaks. That's why they are so excited about heaters. Everyone talks about heaters, Steele. It's the losses that you remember. And what I would say to you and other gamblers out there, losing changes your strategy. Losing, almost jades you a bit to go, okay, I just need to bet this lock, and this lock. Or conversely, I'm just going to do 18 picks and a toonie and just go wild. So what I would implore everyone out there to do is just go back to your research, dial the bet back, and keep your bet number low. If you're doing a parlay, 4 or 5 legs max. And listen to your boy, Uncle Flip, because my first pick, Steele, I got a bone to pick with Willie Styles. And I'm going to say it right now.
Yes.
Because maybe we save our take for the Toronto Maple Leafs in general, but hey, when you get paid in the nature that you got paid, and I understand he put up 3 assists against the San Jose Sharks, whoop-de-doo. I'm starting to get a little annoyed with the leadership of this Toronto Maple Leafs club, because I am not going to be one of those people, Steele, that give them hate for the money they've earned, because they've earned it. And people who throw it, oh, he doesn't deserve this, he doesn't deserve that. 1, it's not your money. 2, check out the salary cap. And 3, this is what these players get paid when they score these points. But Brad Treliving said he has to up his leadership game. So when you get paid and the team is blowing leads left, right, and center, and Willie Styles has 0 points in 3 games, Steele, this is where I'm going to get fired up. So Nylander's got to wake up. Matthews has to wake up. When you get paid like this, it is going to come down to these 4. And I know this is Toronto, and I know people get on them, but this is the situation that they have themselves in. So Nylander going to respond in a big way tonight against the Edmonton Oilers. I hope you like that preamble, Steele, because mans are heated. But in his career against the Winnipeg Jets, oh my goodness, against the Edmonton Oilers, he has 21 points in 23 games, something like that, and a whole boatload of assists. Willie Styles, anytime assist, that's my first pick. He needs to respond, and so does this Maple Leafs team.
Yes, they do. Sorry, I thought you were going to continue some of those picks
I want to, but I just need to stop for a second.
Completely agree with you and Willie about Willie Styles. He gets paid. He hasn't really done much. That San Jose game doesn't really matter because of the blowout. Again, it's the San Jose Sharks. He needs to be a lot better, and that's what I noticed in that game against the Colorado Avalanche. The top 4 guys just didn't show up to play. You had the bottom 6, really, Max Domi, Calle Yarncroke, Holmberg, all those guys. I completely agree. I really hope he does. It's going to be a tough task, obviously, going into Edmonton against this firing Edmonton Oilers squad right now. I'm going the opposite direction. Colorado Avalanche heading into the nation's capital, Ottawa Senators. Avalanche on the money line. I'm keeping it simple, like you said. It is a back-to-back. They did play the Montreal Canadiens last night, but they're playing really good. They dominated. They were down 3-0. They didn't let that phase them. They came back and won 5-3 against our Maple Leafs. So I'm going to continue with them on this road trip. Avalanche money line for my first pick. I'm also going to go Rangers money line against the Seattle Kraken. I know I took the Kraken against the Penguins, didn't pan out.
No, I like it.
But Kraken is on a back-to-back on the road as well.
Tough spot.
Joey Daccord played great against the Penguins. They lost 3-0, but backups going in there, Drieger. So Rangers money line again. Lock of the night though, Jets Islanders under 6.5. Connor Hellebuck, Sorokin, whoever's in net, they're going to put on an absolute show.
Hey, then why don't I just kick off my second pick, which is that same one, Islanders, Winnipeg under. Looking at the numbers a little bit, Steele, which I thought I had ready, which I do. The last time these 2 teams played, the Islanders actually shut them out last year at the end of last season, which is, take it for a grain of salt. But when you look into the overall head-to-head numbers, 6 of the last 9 have gone under the total. Sorokin, Hellebuck, Winnipeg a little banged up. I'm loving that under. That's all I need to say. Lock of the night, though. Arizona at Calgary. I just want to show a little bit of love for the Calgary Flames' ability to be that team that the second I think they're going to go on a prolonged losing streak, they actually burn me. And look, Ottawa, Arizona, okay, Vegas is struggling. That's 3 straight wins. Markstrom back, healthy, looking pretty good. I can't help but feel that he knows he is going to be on the move still, and he is playing like it. That's not something you can really predict, but that's just something I wanted to bring up. And lastly, something you can read into. Calgary 8-1-1 in their last 10 against Arizona. And right now, at home, money line, which is my lock of the night, minus 170. To me, this should be minus 200 or more. Give me the Flames on the money line to keep it rolling, because there's something to be said about players who have been talked about, literally. Hanifin, Tanev, I know Zadorov got traded, and Markstrom. Steele, these guys have been on that trade bait board since October.
And Lindholm as well.
There you go. So maybe there's something to be said about, if the writing's on the wall, why not play yourself into a really good situation, which I think is what's happening. Buying into it, Steele, drinking the Kool-Aid. Flames, money line, lock of the night.
Love the Flames money line against the Arizona Coyotes. I know it hasn't been the toughest matchup opponents, but 3-game winning streak at home against this Coyotes. I'll take that any day of the week.
Why not? Yeah.
170. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, go check out Locked On Sports Today on YouTube, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. They're here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And thank you so much again for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Let's go, Buffalo.